Darling in the Franxx is a 2018 mech romance anime collaborated by Trigger Studios and A1 Studios. A show about a guy named Hiro fighting dinosaurs with his half-dinosaur girlfriend who calls him Darling. That is a basic and surface-level summary of the show. But many people would say otherwise. I'll just state right away, there is no one way to talk about Darling in the Franxx without inevitably bringing up Neon Genesis Evangelion. This comparison is the most common description many people bring up. Darling copies everything from EVA, from plot details to character moments to even lifting moments shot for shot. This too is a surface level summary of the show. However, many people have chosen not to watch the series for themselves and go off the assumption that Darling ripped off EVA as a general conclusion. After all, hate garners attention. But with this blind rage and mockery, people fail to explore and realize that Darling is more than just an Evangelion clone. When people decide not to go out of their way and form their own opinion, Darling's reputation becomes twisted and misinterpreted based on what others say. So, what this video will hope to prove is that Darling in the Franxx is not a sleazy and perverted ripoff of Evangelion, and there's a lot more underneath the surface. I decided to come up with this analysis following my Coral Knights 3 video, where the characters play an important role in that storyline. I haven't seen the show in a good 5 years, so a rewatch initially seemed harmless, only for me to remember that people hate the show because it reminds them of something better. And since practically no one has ever said anything nice about this show on YouTube, I would like to inform people about what they have been missing out on and answer the question if Darling in the Franxx stands on its own. This video is not a review of the show, but rather discussing elements and themes that the show presents, while distinguishing it from Evangelion. Think of it as the shitty weeb version of YMS's Kimbo review, but it holds the same thesis of two properties being separate entities despite sharing some similarities. In addition, there will be spoilers to not just Darling, but also Evangelion, and any other franchise I will bring up later on. You have been warned. There's no better comparison to first bring up between the two franchises than with its main lead. First off, EVA focuses on 3 leads where Darling focuses on 2. But it hasn't stopped people from making bad faith comparisons regardless. Hiro is nowhere near as emotionally scarred or introverted as Shinji, but because they are a young adult piloting a robot, he is often compared to Shinji. Hiro is more outgoing, he's open about stuff, he genuinely cares for others, he gave the other children names growing up, and he understands his shortcomings that are alleviated when he's with 02. We first meet him where he wants to be a parasite like the others, but fails because of his poor synchronization rates, fearing that he would be a useless soldier for Papa and the other adults. Then, when 02 comes around, he finds a purpose to his life and contributes to helping Squad 13 as the series continues. Shinji is not that. In the first episode, he has no interest in doing his father's deeds and is forced to pilot EVA Unit 1 because he doesn't want Rei to die. Afterwards, he basically becomes a pawn for Nerve and only follows their orders, otherwise everyone's dead. He hates doing it, especially when he does stuff that's against his will. And the way both characters develop throughout is far different. Hiro realizes that he met 02 as a child and doesn't want to lose her again, also while dreaming of being free together. Eventually, he helps 02 to learn what it means to be human, ironically losing his humanity in the process. He doesn't care that he knows he's going to die in order to defeat Virm. As long as 02 doesn't have to fight alone, saving his friends in the process is all that matters. How does any of that sound similar to Shinji? A character whose depression worsens as the series continues, becomes psychologically traumatized in like 20 different ways, and in the end, learns to love himself and finds purpose in life just by living. If anything, Hiro is the opposite of Shinji, who champions hope, while Shinji channels despair for most of the series. That's what the song was all about. But of course, that's only one half of the pair. Next is 02. And let's get this out of the way, 02 is not a combination of Asuka and Rei. Yes, 02 is a clone, just like Rei. Yes, she's outspoken and open, just like Asuka. She even wears a red jumpsuit when piloting her mech. Again, just like Asuka. But that's where the similarities end, because there's one key difference between 02 and the EVA girls. 02 cares about Hiro, hence calling him her darling. Everyone and their mother knows Asuka vehemently hates Shinji, constantly calling him stupid and an idiot. And while Shinji does care for Rei doesn't really care about Shinji for most of the series, other than smiling in that one episode and saying thank you to Shinji in another. Much like Shinji, Rei is a pawn of nerve, but obeys their every command, having a strong loyalty to Gendo after he saved her life. Sure, she does open up later on, but then she dies and a new Rei takes her place. Now in the manga, Shinji and Rei's relationship does develop further, but I'm only referring to Anno's true vision of the original series, including End of Evangelion. The only other time she cares for Shinji is in the End of Evangelion, where she allows him to choose to keep living and undo the third impact, which again happens at the very end. This all circles back to 02. In the first episode, she has her eyes on Hiro and no one else. While their relationship is initially predatory and seductive, as you get to know these characters and when they unveil the truth, their relationship becomes a lot more formal and natural. 02 only acts the way she does because she was convinced at a young age that the more Klaxosaurs she killed, the more partners she drains, and the more times she rides with Hiro, especially after he survived their third ride, she'll become human and be with her one true darling. But once she finds out that it was Hiro the whole time, the seductive and manipulative succubus side of her melts away, revealing a downright tragic character, constantly experimented on and tortured as a child, being considered a monster and partner killer by other squads, having a hatred for the adults, and becoming a rebel that wants to do whatever she wants without any authority. And while she chooses to fight her own after realizing she almost killed her darling, she knows that she can't do it herself, and that is where Hiro comes in, becoming her metaphorical wings. In the second half of the show, she opens up a lot to the others, and even feels regret for killing her previous partners. This is nothing like Rei or Asuka and how they end up in their series, where Asuka has a mental breakdown and dies, and Rei basically becomes God. You can even symbolize 02's development with her red jumpsuit being swapped out with white once she officially joins Squad 13, showing that she is slowly but steadily becoming an integrated member of the team, and getting rid of the Asuka comparisons. Interestingly enough, in the fourth Rebuilds movie, which came out years after Darling, both Mari and Asuka get white plug suits, looking no different to the jumpsuits in Darling. Remind me who's ripping off who again? I do want to give a shout out to the other characters while I'm at it. To put it simply, Squad 13 has a sense of camaraderie that the Chosen Children lack. Each of them have their unique traits and bounce off one another so well. Even in circumstances where they're not too fond of, they will stick together no matter what because it's all they have. Ichigo especially, the leader of Squad 13, and at first doubts she could live up to everyone's expectations, but with her determination and help from Goro, she becomes a confident leader throughout the series. Sure, there's the love triangle with her, Hiro, and 02, and she becomes extremely jealous, but once the show reaches the halfway mark, she fully understands Hiro's decision to be with 02 and commits for them to get together, slapping some sense into 02 during the attack in Grand Kavas. Likewise, 02 initially teases and hates Ichigo, wanting to show her what a real monster is in a fantastic moment in episode 5. But once understanding one another, she realizes that Ichigo is not a good leader, but a good friend to boot, even if she does get bossy at times. Likewise, Goro is such a dude bro. He watches over everyone in the squad, he fully supports Hiro's decision to ride with 02 even if it kills him, and while he's jealous over Ichigo still having eyes on Hiro, even after Goro gave his hair clip to her, that does get resolved after the fight at Grand Kavas. He's such a dude bro that he was on the verge of self-sacrificing himself to protect the others, right before Ichigo tells him to stop being so selfish. Right at the end of the series, he does order Hiro to not go to space in fear of dying, showing his authority and goals of leaving no member behind. And for God's sakes, the man just wants to fish. Overall, Goro is definitely a team player that looks out for not only his crew, but for the future of humanity by traveling around the world. though I have no idea why he decided to get a Naruto haircut as an adult, but whatever. Miku is the loudmouth stuck-up girl of the group who is supposed to channel Asuka based on her design, personality, and not getting along with Zorome. She doesn't have as much depth as Asuka, but pretty early on, she realizes that her arrogant demeanor could cause a rift with the others once finding the rooms of former Squad 13 members that perished before they showed up. Zorome, on the other hand, is nothing like Shinji. He's loud, outspoken, narcissistic, and has blind loyalty to the adults. Of course, all of that changes once he goes to the city and realizes that the adults aren't all that cracked out to be. From this experience, Zorome starts to question his loyalty and determine whether or not what he's doing is right. And in the end, he strengthens his relationship with Miku as harmless rivals. Honestly, their relationship is much healthier than Shinji and Asuka's, culminating in Shinji strangling Asuka. Twice. Ikuno is gay. No, really, that's actually one of her traits. She doesn't swim with the girls, tries to sync with Ichigo as a test, has a thing for Ichigo, and confesses that she's jealous that she can't be with her. But after a prep talk from Ichigo, Ikuno understands that she's the brains of the group and uses that knowledge to leave a mark of herself, following Kokoro's desire to have a baby. In the last episode, she is shown to document virtually everything about their lives and the world around them, even figuring out how to slow down the parasite's accelerated aging. At one point, she overuses her Franxx's energy, which drains the color out of her hair and is bedridden in the epilogue. Considering Ikuno is gay, you could make the interpretation of this being an AIDS parallel. And if that's the case, the show makes it clear that gay people with AIDS are not only smart, but they have friends that fully support them. Futoshi is a tragic character. He's the fat one that is constantly shown eating food. But this stereotype is just the icing of his character. Oh god, that was a pun, wait! He wants to protect Kokoro when she's his partner, and becomes heartbroken when she's swapped with Mitsuru despite promising that they would be together. Despite all of that, Futoshi wants nothing but the best for Kokoro as long as she's happy. And even if they can't be together, Futoshi wants to stay by Kokoro's side. He even officiated her wedding. There's even an episode where Futoshi refuses to eat because he believes his weight is holding the others down. It isn't until Zorome tells him that he is who he is and he shouldn't change anything about himself. Again, the sense of camaraderie within this group. Oh, and don't feel bad for Futoshi. The epilogue shows that he has a wife and children, so I'm glad he found his family. Having these 10 characters being in a team and working together is such a stark contrast between the EVA pilots, where they're constantly arguing with one another. Sure, there's the episode where Shinji and Asuka have to be in sync in order to defeat an angel, but it wasn't like they had a choice. And then, 2 episodes later, Asuka orders Shinji to crank that soldier boy. And their relationship only becomes more toxic as the show progresses. But of course, I forgot to bring up one more couple, and dare I say, they are more important than our 2 leads. If there's one character who represents the series as a whole, it's gotta be Mitsuru. He starts out wanting to be the golden boy of Squad 13, being quiet and reserved. As a child, he had a frail body and survived an extremely low success rate treatment, needing to take pills to keep going and suffering from a late-stage child fever. Mitsuru becomes jealous of Hiro having a perfect body. That, and he forgot to keep his promise of fighting together, not knowing Hiro's memories were wiped. He even rides with Zero 2 to get back at Hiro, only to be placed in a near-death experience where he starts to re-evaluate his life. Once Hiro remembers his promise, Mitsuru feels like he has nothing left in life, questioning if he should keep going as a parasite. That is where Kokoro comes in and plays a prominent role in Mitsuru's life. Kokoro is a poor, sad soul. She's the nicest member of Squad 13 that wants everyone to be happy. And when she first spots Mitsuru in the greenhouse, the 2 bond, and she becomes the beacon of light for Mitsuru in his darkest time. This shift in personality comes when she gives him a haircut, Mitsuru becoming more open to the rest of the team and having a bro talk with Hiro while swimming, gaining a newfound purpose in life. Over on Kokoro's side, she becomes fascinated with the customs of human life that were purged by the adults, such as marriage and having a baby, but having the foresight of getting in trouble if she told the others. But with her bonds with Mitsuru, she becomes comfortable to share these experiences and the fear of leaving the world without putting a dent in it. It becomes tragic when the Nines rat them out to Ape, and both losing their memories of getting married. But after rekindling their bond, they vowed to never leave each other's side again. Their arcs conclude where both of them sit out the final battle in space to watch over the planet and prepare for the arrival of their newborn, becoming humanity's first family after Virm's control. These characters, especially Mitsuru, exemplify the series as a whole, and that this is a character that could only work in Darling and not in EVA. Honestly, with there being so many characters in the main team, there's not much going on with the other characters. There's Nana and Hachi, but their development doesn't come until way late into the show. They were former parasites grown up, Nana losing her partner in a battle and gets severe PTSD during her puberty relapse, and another Nana takes her place. They basically serve as commanding officers for Squad 13, giving them orders, but as they stick close to Dr. Franxx, where he gives them separate orders outside of Ape, they start questioning their loyalty to the adults. Eventually, they learn to take responsibility of being parental supervisors for future generations, and there may be a budding romance between the two in the epilogue, despite Hachi losing all romantic emotions. If I have to compare them to EVA characters, it would probably be Misato and Kaji. But again, stark differences. Nana and Hachi do what they think is best and safe for the parasites, and following Grand Kavas, they think what's right for themselves and learn to emotionally care for the children. Definitely nothing like EVA, where Misato sexually assaults Shinji and Kaji only cares about his watermelon garden. On the topic of Dr. Franxx, he is nothing like Gendo. Yes, both characters have their hidden motives, but Dr. Franxx wants to get back at Virm to save humanity. Gendo says, "Fuck all humans, I want to be with my wife." Franxx did a lot of stuff behind Virm's back, placing defective children in stasis that would be used to repopulate the world, showing remorse when Nana gets her relapse, placing 02 in Squad 13 because Hiro was there, and having Squad 13 have an organic lifestyle where every aspect of their lives is not mitigated by Ape. Now, of course, not all of it was planned out from the start, but through Hiro's curiosity and giving something 02 to be inspired by, Franxx used that opportunity to save the world. Gendo did everything he wanted just to get trolled by the clone of his wife, getting metaphorically killed by his wife, and finds out his son gets the final say on what to do with humanity. There's other characters I want to bring up, such as the 9s and 01, but I'll talk about them later on, since I don't have much to say about them at the moment. Honestly, Darling focuses more on characters who are roughly around the same age, unlike how Evangelion has a wider palette of characters from different ages. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but where EVA explores different aspects of life, with each character having different experiences, Darling focuses on characters in one age group that explore the many elements of growing up bouncing off from one starting point. Another comparison haters falsely accuse Darling of stealing is plot synopsis, story elements, and shot composition. These claims likewise are largely over-exaggerated, and the more you watch the show, the more Darling does not only distance itself from the comparison, but tells its own story with its own themes. During the rewatch, I took down some notes, and one of these sections was any comparisons to Evangelion. These may not be all of the comparisons, as it is likely I missed some, but here are the ones I caught. The show stars young adult teenagers in a post-apocalyptic future piloting mechs to fight giant monsters. Said characters have mental breakdowns throughout. Young adults are ordered by a military corporation that use a one-word name who have their hidden ulterior motives. The rest of humanity lives in modified cities that depends on the child soldiers. The main female lead wears a red jumpsuit when piloting her robot. Rival characters that mess with one of the leads. That same rival is cloned and pilot mass-produced mechs. A bright orange substance is a key element when using these mechs, which is later revealed to be the liquefied remains of organisms. The giant mechs that the heroes use are the same species as the monsters they fight. When there's a malfunction in the synchronization between the pilot and mech, the mech becomes feral. One of the giant monsters is a geometric shape that emits a high-frequency pitch. Another monster traps one of the main characters, where he later frees himself after self-reflection. And towards the end of the series, there is an ascension which results in death. Now, on the surface, these comparisons would have anyone assume that Darling ripped off numerous elements from Evangelion and opted not to change anything. But that's the thing, surface level comparisons. I already went over how Zero Two and Asuka wearing red is a bad comparison when Zero Two switches to white by episode 8. But there's so much more differences within these similarities. First off, Evangelion did not create the idea of teenagers dealing with trauma while piloting giant robots. That has been around in anime as far back as the 70s. And the ideas that both series explore are far drastic from one another. The premises being the same is just the foundation. Same goes for the world building. Ape is basically Seele, and subsequently Nerve to an extent, where the higher-ups are faceless entities that talk in meeting rooms, planning for complete freedom by sacrificing humanity. Except Seele and Nerve use the angels, those that already inhabit the earth, as part of their plan to achieve instrumentality, while Ape, later revealed as Virm, has been going to war with the Klaxosapiens, the previous dominant species on Earth, for eons. Yes, both groups want humanity to achieve enlightenment, but Seele only cares about the human part. Virm is an intergalactic entity that will force all life forms in the universe to join a false paradise. There's also the father symbolism with Papa and Gendo, but the main difference is that Hiro and the others openly question and lash out at the higher-ups of Ape, and Hiro claims that after their fight is over, he and Zero Two will live their lives without Papa's watch. Shinji does not have the balls to talk back to his father, or anyone else for that matter. Tokyo 3 is nothing like the cities in Darling. While Tokyo 3 is depicted as regular people trying to live their lives in a messed up world, the cities are underground, lifeless, industrialized wastelands where orange saturates everywhere you look. All the adults live in plain, dull apartments, blissfully unaware of the outside world. Natural experiences of human life, marriage, sex, and children are concepts faded into obscurity, replaced with machines that emit artificial joy and pleasure, never having a need for the user to leave their pods. With the cities, I compare it less to Evangelion and more to the dystopian worlds of 1984 and Brave New World, cities created by the rich to give everyone total paradise, ironically becoming slaves for the rich. Big Brother kind of stuff. When it comes to Evangelion units and the Franxxs, there are differences too. Other than the Franxxs having more humanistic features and their designs compared to EVA units, the Franxxs use magma-layered weapons to kill Klaxosaurs, and EVA pilots are surrounded by LCL to use their mechs. Both are bright orange fluids, but magma is used to power the cities and other resources for Ape, where LCL only has one purpose. Of course, the twist is that magma are evolved liquidated bodies of male Klaxosapiens, and LCL is the primordial form of all life on Earth. This also leads into the twist that EVA units are angels and Franxxs are Klaxosaurs, both modified by their enemies. Once again, a contrast into how the mechs are used. EVA Unit 1 being used to proceed with the Human Instrumentality Project during the Third Impact, and Ape uses Franxxs to have the Klaxosaurs kill one another, which leads to both Klaxosaur species joining forces to fight Virm. This parallels one another with the male human pilot and male magma cores piloting a female warrior, something that is not apparent in EVA, and how the EVA units channel the souls of the dead or something. It almost becomes tragic that Klaxosapiens lose their knowledge of love for both genders through evolutionary survival, only working in a savage mindset by a male and female symbiosis because it's all they know without wondering why. And this leads into 01, the Klaxosaur princess, and what 02 was cloned off of. She sees both humans and Virm as one and the same, and destined to avenge her people by going after everyone, including her own twisted and altered brethren. Because she had been isolated for so long, she does not see companionship or love as a genuine thing, rather a tool to reach her goals. It isn't until she realizes that Hiro and 02 restored what it means to be in a loving relationship for Klaxosapiens that 01 gifts them Strelitzia Apis to defeat Virm in her final breath. Though I have no idea why she forces herself onto Hiro to reach that conclusion. Maybe Klaxosapiens had their own customs, plus it's possible that she was checking to see if Hiro had Klaxosapien blood. Other than that, I have no idea why they put this in the show. Other contrasts include EVA units syncing pilots with their mechs, where the mechs run on a battery and have a time limit. The Franxxs are powered through the bonds of both the pilot and pistons as long as they are in sync with one another, and if that balance is not respected, both mechs go ballistic, with EVA units going berserk, still retaining their shape but having an animalistic mindset. But Franxxs enter Stampede mode, which alters their designs into more animalistic forms. Side note, I kinda wish we got to see more of these Stampede designs. Strelitzia's line form is cool looking, and Genista's Stampede mode was halted before undergoing its full transformation. There's also a major contrast in how the show presents its monsters. Evangelion presents the angels as Lovecraftian, sometimes biblically accurate monstrosities that can destroy anything in milliseconds, each having a unique and memorable design, unlike the Klaxosaurs, where the designs are very generic looking. But I think that's the point. The giant monsters are not a focal point of the show. EVA has their battles last for most of the episode, where some episodes of Darling start with the Franxxs concluding their fight with Klaxosaurs, sometimes off-screen. Instead of focusing on the action, the show lures the audience with fun fight scenes, but having them stay for intriguing and personal character arcs. So when we get to stuff like the fights at Grand Kavas and the final battle in space, viewers are less interested in crazy-looking monster designs and more on the character dynamics that were developed throughout the show. EVA's angels only exist to push the narrative and have the characters deal with their own insecurities. There's one Klaxosaur who is a geometric shape and screams, similar to Remiel, but this Klaxosaur could reform its shape into whatever, where Remiel only does that in the Rebuilds movies. Another episode has a Klaxosaur holds Goro hostage inside of it, similar to Lilai trapping Shinji. Both characters have self-reflections while trapped, but Ichigo reunites with Goro to free him before he could sacrifice himself. The contrast is how Shinji frees himself on his own, unlike Goro who finds a strong bond with Ichigo and working together to break free. And also, Goro is not the main character of the show! The final comparison, story-wise, is with the mysterious rival characters of the Nines and Kaworu. Right away with the contrasts, 9 Alpha shows up as early as the 6th episode and introduces himself to Hiro in the next, unlike Kaworu, who literally shows up for one episode right before the show officially loses its budget. The Nines and their Strelitzias are clones of 02, without the synchronization or Klaxosapien blood, while Kaworu has his collection of dummy plugs that are used to pilot Seilei's mass-produced EVAs. Another contrast is their development. Kaworu knows that he's an angel and works for Seilei to push forward with the third impact, but also uses his time to test Shinji and his independence by basically being gay for him. Likewise, the Nines know that they're Papa's most loyal soldiers, ratting out Kokoro wanting a baby and crashing her and Mitsuru's wedding. But their confidence shatters when Virm has no use for them and leaves them for dead, some of which getting ripped apart. 9 Alpha takes it to heart the most, feeling betrayed by Papa and that he was only used for alternative means. He decides to help Squad 13 reach Apis in the final battle to get back at Virm, sacrificing himself to try and make amends for all he did. There's 2 other Nines that survived their betrayal, but since they don't have as much of depth as Alpha, I'm brushing over them. None of this sounds like Kaworu, by the way, where he basically has Seilei inadvertently fall into his plans, having Shinji decide on humanity's future based off of their friendship. Not to mention that both Ape and the Nines are prominently shown throughout Darling, while Seilei and Kaworu appear less frequently and or in the background. So with those being all of these story comparisons, Darling also channels Evangelion through referencing its shot composition. However, these comparisons are completely lackluster. The shots that are lifted directly from EVA are just that, references, homages to a show that Darling was majorly inspired by. Evangelion is one of the most influential anime series ever made. Between that and the Akira motorcycle slide, almost everyone has referenced Evangelion in one way or another. Even American cinema knows what EVA is.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
And if people go after Darling for using shots from Evangelion, how about we go after other shows that have referenced this one anime? Should we go after Regular Show for parodying the Evangelion opening? Or how about Steven Universe copying the infamous congratulations scene? Evangelion itself was inspired by other forms of media, including its shot composition referencing other shows that came before it. And EVA isn't the only show that Darling was inspired by. Whenever Strelitzia changes into its synchronized form, I was reminded of the Senketsu transformation sequence from Kill la Kill, another Trigger anime that references Evangelion in a few places. In fact, both transformations occur when there is a proper synchronization. Media has always been inspired by those that came before it while inspiring other media in the future. So when you get people calling Darling an Evangelion ripoff because it has moments that are shot for shot copied over, just because something looks like a duck doesn't mean that it sounds like one. Or is it the other way around? Complaining that Darling in the Franxx rips off Evangelion is not the only thing people hate about this anime. They also complain about the mindless fan service that lacks the emotional depth of EVA. Within the first 5 minutes of episode 1, Dr. Franxx is grab-ass in Nana, and Hiro first meets 02 skinny dipping where she calls him a pervert. The first few episodes double down on the sex appeal, but in what I consider to be a genius move, by episode 9, there becomes a shift from childish, downright juvenile depictions of fan service to more formal and mature depictions of human love. The Franxx's cockpit has the pilot and piston in a straight-up sex position. The guys always stare at a girl's butt while fighting. With that, the female bodies of the girls are constantly being shown off, even their jumpsuits getting melted off at one point. But following episode 8, which is the puberty episode, there becomes a change in how the girls are shown, eventually being shown no different to the guys. There's the traditional anime beach episode where the girls are in swimsuits and the guys oogle over them. But the second half of the episode has Squad 13 exploring the remains of society before the cities. Kokoro first finding out about babies, and Mitsuru even saving her from getting hurt. 02 licks both Hiro and the girls as a mean to push their buttons. She even assaults Hiro in the bathhouse while he's butt naked and isolates him from the others. But as the show continues, you find out she acts like a succubus because it furthers her goals to find her one true darling and the promise of being human. And when her backstory is revealed, you find out that she gets most of her traits from Hiro when they were children. The licking, calling Hiro her darling, her appetites for sweets. It retroactively changes a lot of her character and develops it further once she opens up. And it's even more interesting when 02 tries to force Hiro to touch her in a sexual manner when she's depressed, egging that this is what he wants, not knowing that the show has moved on from that level of sleaze. Same goes for 01 forcibly kissing Hiro. It's pushed further when 02 leaves Squad 13 before the Grand Kavass fight, and Ape supplies her with all of the parasites she could use for a partner and draining them. Almost like the show is trying to make 02 the horny succubus she once was. But 02 chooses not to have a partner as she knows the truth about her darling going into battle alone. These examples are the show's ways of shifting the focus from intimate and thought-provoking romance back to the sex-focused TNA that the first few episodes prioritized on, but realizing that it won't work because we know the characters, their goals, their hopes and dreams, and not just figures with a pretty face. These are people. And circling back to the Evangelion parallels, this too becomes less apparent in the last few episodes. When Ape is revealed as Virm, they ascend all the adults in the city into their eternal paradise. This is somewhat similar to the Third Impact and the Human Instrumentality Project, but by this point, since Darling has formed its own identity, this ascension is only shown briefly, where it's the consequences of an old world's ignorance, and not a world-ending catalysm like the Third Impact. And in the final episode, when Goro kisses Ichigo before leaving, both Zorome and Miku can be seen doing the shocked Asuka pose, but their presence is blocked by Hiro in the foreground, indicating that the show is well past the Evangelion comparisons and has proven that it has become its own thing. Likewise, the sex appeal and fan service is faded after the show progresses, and we see more mature and healthier relationships. When Kokoro and Mitsuru have sex, it's done off-screen, but just enough is implied that makes their intimacy respectful. Interestingly enough, this is during the episode where the children manage the missile team for themselves, away from Abe's supervision. That is where the more adult and mature moments occur for the characters, and this leads into the themes of the show. Darling has so many themes that I would like to touch on that will hopefully recommend the show to skeptics, including one being a polar opposite to the main lesson of EVA, where Evangelion teaches the importance of independence and learning to love yourself for who you are. Darling preaches the idea of dependency and the importance of companionship. Shinji saves the world by choosing to live and sharing that love with others, preventing humanity proceeding with instrumentality. Rei decides to gain independency after being used numerous times by Nerve, dying and coming back, and thanks to Shinji's inspiration, realizes that she is no one's doll that can be controlled. Even Asuka to an extent, learning to fight on her own without being weighed down by trauma, knowing that her mother always loved her. Until she gets eviscerated by the MBEs. Several characters in Darling try to act independent, but learn that there are some things that they cannot do by themselves. That is where their partners come in, proving that their lives matter and want to make a mark on the world before leaving it. I'm not saying the independence of oneself is better than being dependent, because Darling elaborates the joy of being with others, getting married, raising a family, and inspiring those that come after you. Both shows tackle two different sides, and I think both execute those themes well. And there's one piece of iconography that is constantly repeated throughout Darling, and the theme of dependency. The Zhan. No, not that Zhan. A mythological Chinese bird where a male and female pair fly together. This is the basis for Darling's major theme of companionship, the compassionate bond between husband and wife. And this symbolism is hammered throughout the show that it almost becomes comical how many times the characters quote the Zhan parable. The theme of dependency spreads to not just the characters learning to love one another, but the idea of regaining the natural parts of humanity. There is a major theme of nature versus artificial control, and how the former is the most humane, no matter how alluring the latter is. The parasites are child soldiers created by Ape, using Dr. Franxx's cloning experience. It's not explained why children are created and not adults, but I think it's because of the likelihood that children are easily manipulated by the watch of adults, and with them being clones, parasites become disposable for Ape, not having a long life expectancy, reinforced with the accelerated aging. Ape constantly supervises every Mistotine in order for the parasites to fight the Klaxosaurs. This includes what partners are most suitable for a Franxx, what to eat, and their orders, even if those orders cost them their lives. But in the episodes where Squad 13 fends for themselves, they find it more enjoyable to do things on their own, rather than being told what to do. We get a little bit of that in the puberty episode before, where Squad 13 members begin to grow a natural bond with one another, showing a bond that is much better than any other squad. But here, when they have dinner by themselves, every other time they pray to Papa. But it's Zorome, who ironically was the most loyal to the adults before the city episode, suggests praying for themselves, since they were the ones who made their dinner. Add on top of their established camaraderie, Squad 13 also preaches an environmental message. In the epilogue, Goro travels the world to recultivate the environment. The organic wildlife inside the Mistotines spread to actual soil, and humanity learns to use alternative resources to generate energy rather than relying on magma. Even in the infamous backstory episode, which many consider the show jumping the shark, Dr. Franxx hated creating the procedure for humanity gaining semi-immortality by euthanizing the ability to reproduce, fearing that humans chose to become artificial gods at the cost of their natural features, including death. And while we're at it, let's bring up the backstory episode. It's fine. People hate how the episode ruins a lot of the mystique and world building the show had up until now, but honestly, a lot of the information revealed in this episode was stuff already set up prior. Plus, it leads more into the artificial versus nature theme that the show preaches, where the rich become richer, and Klaxosaurs begin to attack humans because they were destroying their habitat, ultimately leading into the cities where Ape gains full control over humanity. Some people find it unrealistic that Ape randomly showed up out of nowhere, and how 99.8% of humanity blindly agreed to living forever regardless of the consequences. But considering how Virm was planning their counterattack on Earth for millions of years, it's likely they had a plan to weasel in. And let's be honest with ourselves, Humans are pretty fucking stupid. We will jump for the idea of being a mortal without a second thought. Speaking of which, I never felt like Virm's reveal in the final 5 episodes were rushed. It was established well before that Ape was not human and that they were hiding something. Virm being Zero One's mortal enemy also makes sense, because why else did the Klaxosapiens evolve into becoming savage beasts? With Virm invading Earth, twice actually, you can make the parallels on colonialism and artificially controlling a native's culture and lifestyle. But don't think too hard on it. And even if Virm wasn't either Klaxosapien or human, what else would they have been that wouldn't be an asspull other than being aliens? If they were ghosts, robots, or trans-dimensional beings from an alternate universe, people still would have complained. So yeah, the final 5 episodes of the show were not rushed in my opinion, and that the show was able to create a satisfying finale for its viewers. One more thing about the episode, Dr. Franxx when he was young kind of looks like Hiro. Maybe Franxx intentionally had Code 016 be cloned after him, and also his fiancée, Karina, kind of looks like 9 Alpha. I'll let you leave that to your interpretation. The backstory episode does not entirely revolve around the origins of this world. It also switches back to the main characters following the wedding crash. This back and forth of the characters recovering in a room and the lore dump of their world reminds me of Attack on Titan's lore dump episodes, though let's be fair, those comparisons are less reasonable since Attack on Titan was not finished by then, but it is fairly interesting to see some comparisons of the two in general. You have the giant monster fights. The main character has some unique traits of the monsters and a giant final form. But mainly, they share the bird and birdcage symbolism and the goddamn tree symbolism, ending with an openly ambiguous post-credit scene to boot. But specifically, comparing Darling to Attack on Titan is how they handle their backstories. Attack on Titan's episodes were built on years of mystery and theories, and their payoff was satisfactory. Same with Darling in my opinion, albeit the mystery the episode was built on was less than 20 episodes. But those mysteries and questions were almost as captivating as Attack on Titan. And if you think this brief, random comparison to Attack on Titan isn't fair and justified, do you see how similar it is when you're comparing Darling to Evangelion? All 3 animes deal with giant monster fights that star child soldiers suffering through trauma, plus each using philosophical and religious symbolism. And yet, all 3 handle their stories in their own unique ways. Just be glad I didn't add Gundam into this comparison, otherwise this segment would have been longer. But if there is one piece of media that parallels Darling in terms of presentation and reputation, it's actually not an anime. And judging by the music in this video, it's pretty obvious what that is. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a sequel to the original Wii game released for the Switch in December 2017, only a month before Darling released its first episode. The game was mocked and ridiculed for several reasons when it came out, replacing the grounded and realistic presentation of the first game, and also Xenoblade X, I didn't forget about you, with a more bright and colorful approach similar to a lot of anime. Many female characters are heavily sexualized, wearing revealing outfits, having some moments being played for perverted sleaze. The main cast was louder and annoying than the simplicity of the first game's cast, alongside its voice casting and direction. Tutorials that misled many players and were only shown once, a terrible map system, a slow start, tedious skill checks throughout mandatory parts in the story, and an in-game gacha system that has incredibly low pull rates. And yet, Xenoblade 2 has a following despite its many warts. Much like Darling, this game features a rich and thought-provoking story with several main characters dealing with their own grief. Character motives are literally locked away from past trauma and opened up by the companionship of their partner. As the player spends more time with these characters, they grow to relate and appreciate the humane and relatable traits that many party members have, learning what it means to be human despite not being one. The fear of extinction is present through the Titan continents dying off. Blades are reborn to new drivers without any memories of their prior lives, failing to make an impact on the world. Many of these messages are in Darling, Both Hiro and Rex are positive protagonists that want to help everyone that they come across, including those that want them dead. They're compassionate and thoughtful for the others, and both learn the power of being with their partners is what it will take to save the world. Hell, the main two leads have the same primary colors of red and blue, a post-credit scene where words are exchanged but fall on deaf ears, and thus Boy Met Girl and a new story begins. Chapter and episode titles appear on a black screen at the end of each part, and the message of there being more to people and stories than what is on the surface. And much like how Darling and Evangelion should respectively be parallel to one another, that's literally what happens with Xenoblade 1 and 2 in the endgame. In recent years, Xenoblade 2 has been seen in a much more brighter light when discussing the story and its characters, where the hate has subsided and people began to appreciate what the game really has going for by actually playing it. Unlike Darling, where sadly it's criticized to this day. It's a shame, because there's two elements I love the most of this show. One of these elements is the fairy tale symbolism, and how it helps the show stand out from the EVA comparisons. In a way, the anime is a modern-day fairy tale talking about promises, deception, and love. There's the literal storybook that Zero Two is inspired by, which I wonder if this was a book made by Ape just to mock Zero Two, saying that she'll never become fully human with how the story ends. The story itself gives off classic fairy tale vibes of the main character not living happily ever after, learning a questionable moral by the end. There's definitely major comparisons to Beauty and the Beast and the original story of The Little Mermaid, where a beast sacrifices her monstrous traits to become human and marry a prince, only for the witch's curse to wear off and leave without warning. And certain fairy tale traits can be found outside of the storybook. All of Zero Two's partners die after they ride with her for a third time. The threatening legend of the monstrous code 002. How 01 is called the Klaxosaur princess. The cracked mirror 02 has. True Love's Kiss. The metaphorical depiction of Strelitzia turning red, blue, and even gold based on the plot's circumstances. 02's true form showing up when her human facade wears off. The planet refuses to allow any vegetation because of humanity's past abuse of mining magma. The fact that 02's body is left as a husk, as her conscious is transferred to Strelitzia Apis, which later turns to stone. And when Virm is defeated, the stoned figure of 02 turns into a budding tree for future generations. Vegetation returns to the planet, and a bright light appears in the sky for 3 days straight. An overall message of the show is to not judge a book by its cover, and the show gets meta with it. 02 being called a monster, her acting seductively to others, especially Hiro, the overt sexualization of the female cast in earlier episodes, Mitsuru's character arc, the Klaxosaurs and Ape's true motives, the beach episode, the nature of the city, and the Evangelion parallels, all of which being deconstructed, explored, or dissolved as the show progresses. The show also acknowledges how twisted and unfair a lot of these classic fairy tales ended. 02 leaves Hiro to fight Virm because she reverted to her Klaxosapien self, leaving the others and hiding the story's ending. But it's Hiro telling her that they could rewrite the story together and give them a happily ever after. And, as shown in the epilogue, X Squad 13 fulfills that promise of writing a new ending based on Hiro and 02. This promise allows 02 to become Strelitzia Apis in its true form. Some people don't like the idea that 02 transforms into a literal mommy mech, but I see it as the next logical step for Squad 13's Franxxs, who already have the traits and faces of their female pistons. It's never explained why Squad 13 is the only ones who have personalized Franxx designs, but considering Hiro is a part of that squad, and that Dr. Franxx knows his relationship with 02, it's possible that he gave them those separate orders to subtly be the next leaders of humanity. And that leads into the final theme that I love about Darling. During this rewatch, I noticed that Darling's final theme is the idea of leaving a mark on the world. This is established in many ways, from Kokoro wanting to have a baby, to 02 recreating the storybook from memory, and also from eating it. The Sakura tree is memorialized as the sanction for future generations, and Ikono documenting everything about the world. To me, this theme is important since it gives everyone their individuality, rather than being coded numbers that are ordered to be killed in battle and their names are lost to time. There's a contrast between the Klaxosapiens and humanity following their war with Virm, and what they decide to leave behind. Klaxosapiens failed to warn future species about Virm because they evolved to the point where war and violence was all they knew, rather than compassionate love and speech, ultimately destroying the preservation of their futuristic culture. But it's humanity that learned to regain those necessities that they were able to preserve their history for generations to come. Even though Hiro and Zero Two blew up Virm's home planet and all of its collected souls were free, Virm seems mildly annoyed, claiming that they would return in the apex of evolution. I assume Virm believes the next species to conquer Earth will not be aware of their existence, not knowing that humanity has recorded and preserved what they and the Klaxosapiens went through. So if Virm did return to Earth, their inhabitants will be ready for their counterattack. Honestly, leaving a mark behind gets to me. Personal tangent here, I know that my Service videos don't get as much attention as my video essays, but I don't care. I always feared that my shared universe concepts will go directly to my grave. But with me revising and uploading my storylines to YouTube, I feel more relieved that my stories are able to be shared across the internet. And I know some things do get lost in the shuffle, but if anyone is confused on certain elements of the series, that's what the comments are for. I will answer any question on what I was trying to say. And Darling is able to portray that idea almost flawlessly, and should be recognized for its own themes and not just some Evangelion ripoff. So now, we get to the question that was asked at the beginning. Does Darling and the Franxx stand on its own? And if the answer wasn't obvious, yes. The comparisons to Evangelion are purely surface level and is not reflective of the series as a whole. This show emits so much heart and soul into only 24 episodes with its story, characters, and themes. It's only a shame that people will treat it as the show that ripped off EVA. This false perception is the reason why this video is so long, not only to debunk the plagiarism claims, but celebrate what the show offers as well, and how it is a different experience to Evangelion. Both shows have their ups and downs, but going after Darling because certain shots look the same, or the fact that they use an orange substance that's actually the remains of some organisms, is not a constructive way to judge the show on its own. This is a show that is an emotional roller coaster. Parts that'll make you happy, make you hyped, and make you sad. But at the end of the day, Darling preaches hope. Hope that current generations will learn from the past and use that to build a better future, leaving a mark on the world and others close to them, riding on the shoulders of a partner and not taking things alone. These messages and more is why I love Darling. It may not be as philosophical or deep as Evangelion, but it doesn't have to be. The show proves that there's much more to it, and those who have seen the show admires what it brings. If you want to form your own opinion, or watch a generally good mech anime, I strongly recommend Darling and the Franxx, either on Crunchyroll or even on Blu-ray. It will be an anime that will stick with you. Also, this will be the last video of the year, so if I get this video done in time, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, or Happy New Year. This has been AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.